The woman on the overpass. It happened on Interstate 80, just outside Laramie, Wyoming, during the last week of October 2019. The temperature had dropped below freezing, the wind was sharp enough to cut through a jacket, and a thick ribbon of ground fog clung to the asphalt like something alive. I was hauling a refrigerated load eastbound, alone in the cab, running a night shift I had taken only because another driver had called in sick. I had driven that stretch hundreds of times, but that night the highway felt emptier and wider than I remembered, like the world past the reach of my headlights simply wasn't there. It was around 2:40 a.m. when I first saw her. The overpass ahead stood like a silhouette against the sky, its concrete sides eaten by darkness. My high beams lit the underside of it slowly, inch by inch, until they caught the outline of a woman standing dead still at the top. She wore what looked like a white, loose shirt, the fabric hanging straight down as if the wind didn't touch her at all. Her arms were at her sides. Her hair, dark and shoulder length, hid part of her face. She wasn't walking. She wasn't pacing. She was simply standing there, leaning slightly forward, staring directly down at the lanes below. I slowed instinctively. Pedestrians on highway overpasses usually mean trouble. I scanned for a stranded car, hazard lights, any movement. Nothing. Just her figure, unblinking and motionless, like she'd been there for hours. When I passed under the bridge, I glanced up through the windshield. She didn't move an inch. 5 miles later, I convinced myself it was someone having a mental breakdown or a lost hitchhiker. Something normal. Something explainable. Then it happened again. At 2:58 a.m., the next overpass appeared ahead. Same thick fog. Same dark emptiness on both sides. And there she was again. Same stance. Same white shirt. Only this time her head was raised slightly, like she had been waiting for me. My stomach tightened. I checked my mirrors, nothing behind me but a long ribbon of black highway. No cars passed in either direction. The world felt sealed off. I passed under her again. Forced myself not to look up this time. Forced myself to keep driving. Another hour passed before the third sighting. This time I wasn't tired. I wasn't imagining things. I was wide awake, gripping the wheel so tightly my fingers hurt. The third overpass rose in the distance. The fog was thicker now, swirling across the road like smoke. I eased off the gas as a familiar shape appeared at the top of the bridge, and my breath caught. She was closer. Not on the center of the overpass like before, but standing almost at the edge of the concrete barrier, her toes practically hanging over the drop. The white shirt looked dirtier now, smeared with something dark, like old soot or dried mud. I rolled to a crawl. The cab lights dimmed slightly, electrical dip, maybe, but it made the moment feel even colder. Her face was visible this time. Pale skin. Sunken cheeks. And eyes that didn't reflect any light at all. They looked like empty, dark sockets. I passed beneath her so slowly I heard the hum of my own engine echo off the concrete. When I finally looked into my side mirror, hoping she'd be gone, I froze. In the reflection, she was leaning forward over the railing, almost horizontal, staring down as if she was trying to see into the cab. I accelerated until my trailer swayed. I didn't stop until I reached a truck stop near Elm Creek, Nebraska, around dawn. There were only 2 trucks parked. The place felt abandoned. I shut off the engine and sat in silence until the shaking stopped. I checked my dashcam. The footage caught the first overpass. A flicker of white. A shape. The second one captured something too, but blurred by fog. The third, when I opened that clip, my hands went numb. The camera didn't show her full figure. It showed only a faint movement, like a shadow shifting right above the windshield. But the audio, the dashcam shouldn't record audio, my model absolutely didn't have a microphone, yet there was sound. A whisper. Quiet. Breaking. Female. The words stretched and warped, but still understandable. Why didn't you stop? I paused the clip, replayed it 3 more times. The same whisper every time, drifting through static. I didn't sleep for nearly a day. When I finally forced myself to, I woke up from a dream where she was standing right outside my cab door, her face pressed to the window. 2 days later, I returned to Wyoming, this time during daylight. I pulled into a highway patrol station and asked, carefully, whether anything strange had been reported on those bridges. The officer behind the desk looked at me for a long moment before answering. He asked which overpasses. I listed all 3. He nodded slowly, then turned his computer screen so I could see. A newspaper photo. A woman in a white blouse. Shoulder-length dark hair. Pale face. She had died on the first of those overpasses exactly 2 years earlier. Jumped in the middle of the night. According to witness statements, multiple truckers tried to call her name, tried to stop her from stepping over the railing. None succeeded. The officer said sometimes drivers still report seeing something on those bridges. But when patrol cars are sent, there's never anything there. When I returned to my truck, I checked the dash cam again. The audio clip was still there, but now more of the static had cleared. The voice wasn't just asking why I didn't stop. After the first sentence, there was a second one, so quiet I had to raise the volume all the way up. Why didn't you help me? The camera recorded this during a time when the audio feature wasn't even enabled. I deleted the file, but sometimes when I'm driving a long, silent stretch of highway at night, I swear I can still hear her whispering in my head. I stopped driving night shifts that winter. But every time I approach an overpass, especially the ones on I-80, my foot eases off the gas automatically. And I never, ever look up at the railing. The end. The knock under the trailer. It happened in late February 2020, at a small truck stop off Highway 95 in northern Idaho, about 20 miles south of Coeur d'Alene. The temperature had dropped below freezing after sunset, and icy winds skimmed low across the parking lot, carrying the kind of silence that makes every metal surface groan. I was hauling a flatbed that week, moving heavy machinery, and I had stopped there only because a storm warning was rolling in from Washington. It was around 11:45 p.m., and the place was nearly empty. One old Peterbilt sat near the pumps, engine idling. A refrigerated trailer hummed quietly near the far exit. But most of the lot was deserted, flooded with pale security lights that flickered every few minutes. My name is Adam. I'd been driving for almost 12 years then, and I thought I had experienced enough to not be rattled easily. But that night changed everything about what I believe is out there on the road. The first knock came shortly after midnight. I had just finished my walk-around inspection, making sure the tie-down chains were tight. As I bent down to check one of the straps near the back, I heard it, a single, sharp knock from beneath the trailer. Not on the side. Not on the deck. Directly underneath. At first I thought it was ice falling off the undercarriage. But there was no ice buildup. Then I told myself it was a loose chain slapping the metal. But all the chains were secured. I crouched lower and aimed my flashlight under the trailer. Nothing. Just my own breath fogging in the beam of light, forming a ghostly cloud before drifting away into the cold air. I stood there longer than necessary, listening. The whole lot was dead silent except for the soft hum of my auxiliary power unit. I eventually climbed back into the cab, shut the door, and tried to convince myself I was tired. I made coffee, pulled my logbook closer, and started reading a weather update on my phone. Then the second knock came. This time it wasn't a single tap. It was 3 quick, deliberate raps, knuckle on metal, directly below my sleeper. My entire cab vibrated with the sound. I froze. At first, I waited for it to repeat. People sometimes hide under trailers, especially runaways or thieves. But these knocks didn't sound like someone trying to stay hidden. They sounded like they wanted me to know they were there. I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight, pulled on my boots, and stepped out of the cab. The wind slapped my face as soon as I hit the ground. My breath rose in thick white clouds. I crouched again and shined the light under the trailer. Still nothing. No feet. No shadow. No movement. The gravel beneath my trailer was untouched, smooth except for my own footprints near the rear axle. I circled the entire truck. Checked between the wheels. Crawled halfway under the trailer on my stomach, looking for any sign of a person. But there was nothing at all. Just the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I got back in the cab, locking the door automatically. I sat there, hands shaking slightly, listening for any noise. But all I heard was the occasional creak of the trailer cooling in the cold air. Around 1:42 a.m., it happened again. This time the knock was violent, a bang that shook the entire trailer, as if someone had swung a heavy wrench against it. The chains rattled. The deck shuddered. My coffee spilled onto the floor. Instinct kicked in before fear did. I grabbed the flashlight and jumped out again, not willing to let someone mess with my rig. The moment my boots hit the gravel, I heard the wind howl through the lot, pushing against my ears like a warning. But what I heard next did not come from the wind. Under the trailer came a scraping sound, like fingernails dragging against steel. Slow, steady, metallic. It lasted several seconds, then stopped abruptly. I dropped to my knees and shined the light underneath. Still nothing. No movement. No footprints. No disturbed gravel. Nothing but cold air and empty space. I backed away slowly, unable to shake the feeling that something was watching me from beneath the darkness, even though I couldn't see it. At 2:10 a.m., the knocks returned, but now from different sides of the trailer, from the left, then the right, then toward the center. It was almost like something was crawling under there, circling, moving in patterns no human could manage without being seen. My fear finally overpowered logic. I climbed back inside, locked both doors, and shut off every interior light. My breathing felt loud in the darkness. Every few seconds, I heard more knocks, some light, some harsh, some echoing through the floor of the cab. Around 2:30 a.m., I turned on my dash camera to record the audio. If someone was trying to mess with me, I wanted proof. But then the knocks suddenly stopped. The silence felt like a trap. I didn't trust it. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Just when I was about to convince myself it was over, the trailer dropped on one side, not enough to break anything, but enough for the cab to tilt an inch or two. It felt exactly like someone heavy had climbed onto the metal beams beneath. My heart hammered so hard it felt like it would crack my ribs. I turned on the exterior lights. The beams illuminated the snowy gravel around me, the empty pumps, the frozen lot. But the light under the trailer revealed nothing. The knocks didn't return after that. The scraping didn't return. The trailer didn't shift again. But I didn't sleep a second that night. Instead, I waited until dawn, when the frost began to melt and the sun broke through the low clouds. Only then did I climb out and check under the trailer again. And that's when I saw it. Not footprints. Not tools. Not signs of an animal. Under the trailer, directly in the center where no human could reasonably reach without leaving prints, were two perfect handprints pressed into the frost on the steel crossmember. They were small, like a child's. Each finger frozen into the metal surface, each line clear and delicate under the morning light. I stared at them for a full minute, unable to move. By the time I brought an employee from the truck stop to show him, the sun had warmed the steel just enough that the frost, and the handprints, had disappeared completely. Later that afternoon, while fueling before leaving, I asked an older driver who was cleaning his windshield if he'd ever heard anything strange about that stop. His expression hardened immediately. He nodded once, slowly. "Yeah," he said. "A kid went missing here in 2008. They searched the whole area. Last thing anyone heard was a trucker swearing he felt someone knocking under his trailer while he was parked for the night." I didn't know what to say. The driver added, "The police never found the boy. But some truckers say they still hear him. Looking for help. Looking for someone to notice." I left before he could say anything else. I don't stop at that truck stop anymore. I don't park overnight in northern Idaho at all. And every time I do a walk-around check, no matter where I am, I make sure not to get too close to the gap beneath the trailer. Because sometimes, late at night, when the highway is empty and the wind dies down just long enough, I swear I hear something tapping softly under the steel. Not loud. Not violent. Just enough to remind me that something is still there. The end. The man walking the yellow line. It happened on a desolate stretch of Highway 200 in eastern Montana, between Jordan and Circle, where the land is so flat and empty that the horizon looks carved with a knife. It was the beginning of November 2021, just after the first snowstorm of the season. Wind howled across the fields, carrying dry snow like sand, scraping against the sides of my cab. I had hauled livestock there many times before, but this run I was hauling an empty trailer back to Billings after delivering cattle earlier that day. It was close to 9:30 p.m., and the temperature had plunged so low that the diesel felt thick in the lines. My name is Richard. I've been a trucker for almost 20 years. I've seen injuries, accidents, wildlife crossings, and long lonely nights without a single taillight in view. But nothing prepared me for the figure I saw walking the yellow line that night. Nothing prepared me for the way he moved, the way he appeared, or the way the highway swallowed him up as if he had never been there at all. The road was deserted. Not a single vehicle had passed me in nearly an hour. My headlights illuminated only the blowing snow and the endless straight ribbon of asphalt ahead. I kept my speed around 50 because the wind kept trying to push the trailer sideways. My wipers clicked back and forth, the rhythm slow and steady. Then, in the distance, I noticed something strange. At first it was just a small dark shape in the center of the road. I thought it might be debris or an animal. But as the gap closed, I saw the shape rise and straighten into the outline of a person. A man. Standing directly on the yellow double line. Walking toward me. His steps were slow, deliberate, and perfectly centered. His posture was rigid, like every muscle in his body was locked. The wind whipped at my trailer, but his clothing didn't seem to move at all. The snow blew past him, but he didn't react to the cold. As my headlights carved through the darkness, more details appeared. He wore a faded blue work jacket and dirty jeans. His boots looked old, the leather cracked and stiff. His hair was dark, matted, and long enough to move with each step. But he didn't shiver. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't acknowledge the massive truck approaching him at all. I eased off the accelerator and tapped the horn. Once. Twice. No reaction. He kept walking straight down the line, as if following it into eternity. When I got close enough to see his face, something inside me recoiled. His eyes weren't reflecting the headlights. Not a single glimmer. Instead of pupils or iris, it looked like two empty, dark hollows, not gouged out, but impossibly deep, like looking into wells that had no bottom. His skin was pale, almost gray. And despite the freezing wind, his expression never changed. No fear. No recognition. No awareness. Every instinct in me screamed to swerve, but with the wind gusts I could jackknife easily. I had no choice but to pass him as closely as possible without leaving the lane. My entire body tensed as the cab approached him. But when the nose of the truck was only a few meters away, he did something I will never forget. He turned his head toward me, not gradually, not naturally, but in one smooth, snapping motion that looked inhuman, like his neck didn't resist at all. His entire face swung toward the cab, and though I knew those hollow eyes couldn't truly see me, I felt watched. I passed him. The moment the trailer cleared the spot where he stood, my mirrors caught a fleeting reflection. He wasn't behind me. The road was completely empty. I slammed on the brakes. The trailer skidded slightly before straightening out. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I grabbed my flashlight, jumped out into the cold, and walked around to look down the road. He wasn't there. I shined the light left and right across the open fields. No footprints. No movement. Nothing but wind and snow. The entire highway was empty, as if he had never existed. But I know what I saw. I know he was real in that moment. I got back into the cab, locked the doors, and started moving again. The heater blasted hot air, but my hands still shook. My mind replayed the hollow eyes, the way he turned his head. The unnatural stillness. 15 minutes later, I approached another rise in the highway, a slight hill with a long descent. As I crested it, my lights swept the road below. And there he was. Again. Walking the yellow line. The same rigid posture. The same slow steps. The same hollow gaze ahead of him. My blood ran cold. There was no way he could have gotten ahead of me. I would have seen him on the sides of the road. There were no side roads. No cars. No trees. Nothing but empty land. But he was there, exactly as before. This time I slowed almost to a crawl. Fear pressed against my ribs. My windshield fogged slightly from my breath. I wiped it and kept watching him. He didn't change his pace. Didn't react. Didn't turn his head. He just kept following the line as though he had done it for decades. When I drove past him the second time, I forced myself to look straight ahead. I didn't want to see those hollow sockets again. My hands tightened around the wheel until my knuckles whitened. But again, something compelled me to check the mirror. He wasn't there. The road behind me was completely clear. The snow drifted across the pavement, forming thin white lines, but no footsteps. No shadow. I hit the accelerator harder than I should have, desperate to put distance between us. For the next half hour, nothing happened. I started to breathe normally again, convincing myself that exhaustion or snow distortion had caused the sightings. But around 10:35 p.m., I saw the faint outline of a figure ahead once more, illuminated by the moonlight cutting through the storm. He was waiting for me. Not walking this time. Standing still. Directly on the yellow line. Facing me. I slowed the truck. Not deliberately, my foot simply lifted off the pedal on its own. Something was wrong with the figure now. His shoulders looked twisted, as if he had been struck and his bones hadn't healed right. His head drooped to one side unnaturally. And his right boot was turned inward at an odd angle. As the headlights illuminated him fully, I saw his jacket. It wasn't just dirty, it was torn across the chest with long, deep gashes that looked like they had once been soaked with blood. The tears were too wide, too jagged to be from an animal. They looked like the aftermath of a violent impact. A memory surfaced, a rumor I had heard years earlier about a DOT worker killed on that stretch in the late 90s. He had been painting the centerline one night when a semi drifted out of its lane and hit him head-on. The story said the driver didn't stop. Didn't report it. The body wasn't found until the next morning, lying on the yellow line, broken and mangled. I never believed the rumor. Until that moment. My headlights swept over the figure, and his head lifted suddenly, smoothly, unnaturally. Those hollow eyes locked onto the cab. I swear I felt a physical pressure in my chest, as if the air around me thickened. For a moment, everything was silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then he stepped forward, not to walk, but as if he was being pulled toward the truck by something unseen. I swerved just enough to avoid a collision, the trailer sliding dangerously before recovering. I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't slow down. I focused only on putting miles between me and that figure. When I reached Circle, I pulled into the first lit gas station I saw and sat in the cab without moving. My breath came in ragged bursts. My hands tingled from gripping the wheel too tightly. A man in the station recognized my shaken state and walked over. When I told him what I saw, he didn't laugh. Didn't question it. He simply nodded. Others have seen him too, he said quietly. Usually during storms. Always on the yellow line. Some folks say he's still looking for the truck that hit him. Or warning others not to repeat his fate. I left before the conversation went further. I haven't taken Highway 200 at night since. And every time I see a centerline glowing under my headlights, a part of me expects him to appear again. Walking toward me. Hollow eyes fixed. Following the line he died on. I avoid looking closely. Sometimes I think if I stare too long, I'll see him watching me back. The end. The voice in the CB radio. It happened on a remote stretch of Interstate 40 in northern Arizona, between Ash Fork and Seligman, during the second week of January 2022. The desert was pitch black that night, the kind of black that swallows your headlights instead of reflecting them. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and a hard wind blew dust across the asphalt like smoke drifting low to the ground. I was hauling electronics eastbound, driving alone, trying to make it to Flagstaff before the storm warnings turned the road into a sheet of ice. It was around 1:15 a.m., the kind of hour when the desert feels endless and the world feels hollow. My name is Jake. I'd been trucking for 8 years at that point. I trusted my rig, trusted my instincts, trusted the CB radio that had gotten me through breakdowns, wrecks, and lonely nights. But that night, around mile marker 222, something happened over that radio that changed everything I thought I knew about the road. The desert around me was empty. No headlights ahead. No taillights behind. The sky was clouded over, not a single star visible. The only sound inside the cab was the low hum of the engine and the occasional whistle of wine through the mirror brackets. Then, out of nowhere, the CB crackled to life. At first it was just static. I assumed it was a weather alert or some distant chatter bouncing off the atmosphere. But then, through the static, came breathing. Slow. Shallow. Labored. Human. I leaned closer to the radio. "Breaker, who's on?" I asked. The static deepened. The breathing grew louder, more deliberate. Then a voice spoke, a whisper so faint and broken it sounded like it crawled through the speaker instead of coming from it. "Don't go any farther." I froze. The voice wasn't familiar. It wasn't panicked or angry. It sounded tired. Worn down. Like someone speaking their last words. "Who is this?" I asked. A long, drawn-out silence followed. I waited, listening to the fragile hiss of the frequency. Then the voice returned. "Mile marker 222. The way it said the numbers sent a chill through me. Stretching the syllables. Struggling to push them through the static. I checked my GPS automatically. I was at 217 and climbing. "Are you broken down?" I asked. "Do you need help?" Silence. Then, in a softer, more desperate tone, the voice whispered. "He's standing by the road." Those words tightened something in my chest. I scanned the shoulder ahead with growing anxiety. Nothing but desert and the faint outline of scrub bushes bending in the wind. "Who's standing by the road?" I asked. Static swallowed the voice. Then, faintly, like a breath against the mic. "Don't let him in." My heartbeat quickened. My hands tightened around the wheel. The radio hissed again, louder, like something was forcing its way through the frequency. I reached mile marker 220. The wind picked up, throwing dust across my headlights. The road shimmered with brief flickers of reflected particles. My tires hummed steadily against the pavement. At mile marker 221, the radio crackled violently. The breathing returned, rapid and uneven now. "Jake." My blood ran cold. I had never said my name on the radio. Not that night. Not on that channel. No one should have known who I was. I grabbed the mic with trembling hands. "Who is this? How do you know me?" Silence. Then the faintest whisper, barely audible under the roar of interference. "He sees you." The hair on the back of my neck rose. I looked into the mirrors automatically. The beams reflected only emptiness. No headlights. No movement. No figure. I swallowed hard as the marker appeared in the distance. 222. A simple white metal sign reflecting my headlights like any other. But as my beams swept the area, I saw him. A man standing on the shoulder. Tall. Thin. wearing what looked like a highway worker's reflective vest. His head was angled downward, as if he were staring at the asphalt. His arms hung stiff at his sides. I slowed instinctively, scanning for a disabled vehicle or tools, anything to indicate he needed help. But the desert around him was empty. He lifted his head slowly, and the beam of my headlights caught his face. His eyes were wide open, too open, unnaturally round. His pupils didn't react to the light. His skin was pale, almost bluish, as if the desert cold had worked its way into his bones. And then, as I passed him, he turned to face the cab with a motion too smooth, too sudden, like a mannequin snapping into a new position. The CB erupted with static so loud my speakers popped. Through the distortion came the voice again, this time frantic, desperate, shaking. "Don't stop! Don't stop! Don't!" The radio cut out entirely. I slammed my foot onto the accelerator. The rig lurched forward, and the trailer swayed before straightening. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I didn't dare look in the mirror. But after a few seconds, instinct forced me to glance. He was standing in the middle of the road behind me. Not walking. Not moving. Standing. Facing the back of my trailer. The radio crackled again, softly, like the last flicker of a dying signal. "You shouldn't have come this way." Then the frequency fell silent. I drove the remaining 50 miles to Flagstaff without blinking. My hands shook so badly when I parked that I dropped my keys twice trying to remove them from the ignition. The next morning, I went to the truck stop diner to calm my nerves with coffee. A local driver around my age noticed how shaken I was and asked what happened. When I told him, he didn't laugh or look confused. He just stared into his cup. "You said mile marker 222, he asked slowly. I nodded. He rubbed the back of his neck. "There used to be a highway worker out there. Got hit during a snowstorm in 2009. Driver never stopped. They found the body the next morning right on the shoulder. Radio was still on. His vest was still reflective." My chest tightened. The driver continued softly. "Some truckers say they still see him. And some say, sometimes he warns people. Others think he's looking for the one who hit him." I left the diner without finishing my coffee. I didn't turn my CB radio on for 3 weeks. Not during storms. Not during night shifts. Not anywhere near Arizona. But sometimes, late at night, when the desert air is dry and the road ahead is empty, my radio crackles on its own. Just static at first. Then faint breathing. And every time, my chest tightens as I wait for the voice to whisper my name again. The end. The rest stop with no lights. It happened on an isolated rest stop off Highway 395 in southern Oregon, roughly 40 miles north of Lakeview. The place sat alone between long stretches of pine forest and open, wind-carved plains. I was hauling lumber to Reno that night, running behind schedule after a mechanical delay earlier in Bend. It was November 2020, well after midnight, and the temperature had dropped enough that the air felt sharp whenever I breathed in. I planned to pull over only long enough to use the restroom and stretch my legs. I didn't intend to stay. I didn't intend to shut off my engine. But the moment I rolled into that rest stop, I knew something was wrong. All the lights were out. Not dim. Not flickering. Dead. Every lamp post, every overhead fixture, every bulb embedded in the walkway leading to the building, all pitch black. The only light came from my headlights sweeping over cracked pavement and a squat concrete building with dark windows. I slowed the truck to idle. The engine rattled against the silence. Something about the place felt abandoned, but not in the way of a closed site. It felt paused, as if it had been used only moments ago, then suddenly emptied. My name is Nate. I've been trucking 15 years. I've parked in rest stops all across the country, good ones and bad ones, but I had never seen one standing in complete darkness with no signs saying it was closed. Even the vending machine area near the entrance had no glow. Against better judgment, I climbed out. The moment my boots hit the pavement, the cold sank into my bones. No wind. No sound. No insects, no distant engines. Just total, oppressive stillness. I walked toward the building, my flashlight cutting a thin beam through the dark. The windows on the left side were so dirty they reflected nothing. The door was slightly ajar, not much, just enough for a thin line of blackness to show where the gap was. This rest stop wasn't supposed to be closed. Google showed it open. CB chatter from earlier showed nothing unusual. And there were fresh tire tracks in the thin frost on the pavement. Someone else had been here recently. I stepped inside. The air changed immediately. Colder. Heavier. The kind of cold that doesn't belong indoors. The reception area was empty. A vending machine hummed faintly, though its screen was dark. The trash bin near the wall was overturned, but nothing spilled out. The floor tiles were cracked in places, and the overhead lights were coated with dust. I swept my flashlight across the room. A faint scuffing sound came from the hallway to the right, like footsteps, slow and dragging. Not hurried. Not panicked. Just deliberate. I called out, "Anyone here?" No answer. Just the low, steady echo of that dragging step. The restroom door stood at the end of the hallway. Its metal surface was scratched, but the scratches didn't look like graffiti, they looked like desperate clawing, long uneven lines running downward. I pushed the door open. Inside, the darkness seemed thicker. My flashlight beam trembled across cracked mirrors and empty stalls. The sinks were dry. The smell was stale, like the building had been shut for months. Then something moved. Not visually, but the air shifted beside me, as if someone had walked past without touching the ground. A faint pressure brushed my sleeve. I sucked in a breath, my chest tightening. I swept my flashlight across the mirrors again, and that's when I saw it. A silhouette. Not behind me. Not beside me. In the mirror. A man. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Wearing a work jacket. Standing completely still in the far left corner of the room. I spun around, ready to confront whoever was there. No one stood in the corner. But in the mirror, he was still there, unmoving, head tilted down as if watching the floor. My breath misted in the cold air. I stepped backward toward the hallway, never taking my eyes off the mirror. When I crossed the threshold back into the hallway, there was a faint sound, like a soft exhale or a whisper I couldn't quite make out. My flashlight flickered. Then the scuffing footsteps began again. Slow. Dragging. Closer now. Coming from down the hall to my left, toward the exit. I didn't wait. I bolted for the door. Outside, the cold air hit me like a wave. The lot was just as empty, just as silent. My truck stood alone under the dead lamp posts. But the second I stepped onto the pavement, I felt watched, intensely, suffocatingly watched. From inside the building. From those dark windows that hadn't reflected anything before. I forced myself not to look back as I hurried to the cab, climbed in, and slammed the door shut. My hands shook as I turned the engine over. The heater roared to life, filling the cab with warm air that did nothing to calm me. I was just about to shift into drive when I caught movement in my left mirror. The building's entrance. The door, the one I'd left open, was now slowly closing. Not blown shut by wind. Not yanked. Closing steadily. Smoothly. As if someone inside was pushing it. My heart pounded as I put the truck in gear and rolled forward. The lot lights remained off. The asphalt remained dark. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw the warehouse-like windows on the right side of the building flicker with faint light, like someone walking past inside with a flashlight. I didn't stop. Didn't check. Didn't even slow. By the time I got back onto the highway, my breathing was ragged. The desert felt more alive now, as if the darkness itself was moving beside the truck. 20 minutes later, I reached a small gas station. I walked inside, still shaken, and asked the attendant if the Highway 395 rest stop had been having electrical issues. She looked at me strangely. That stop, she said slowly. Honey, that place has been closed for 12 years. My stomach twisted. No. I was just there. The building's still standing. No barricades. Closed, she repeated. They shut it down after a man died there. Maintenance worker. Slipped and smashed his head in the restroom. They found him in the corner. Workers said they saw someone walking the halls after hours. Nobody ever lasted long there. I stared at her. She added, power was cut. They never fixed it. The cold feeling crept back into my chest. I drove off before she could say more. Since that night, I never stop at dark rest areas. I keep driving until I find one lit, clean, and full of people. And every time I see an abandoned building or a dim rest stop on a lonely stretch of road, my hands tighten around the wheel. Because sometimes, in the reflection of my side mirror, I swear I see a faint shape watching me. Tall. Still. Wearing a work jacket. And standing just inside a doorway. The end. The hitchhiker with the broken wrist. It happened on Highway 50 in Nevada, on the stretch long known as the loneliest road in America, between Austin and Eureka. It was late September 2021, around 3:30 in the morning. The sky was moonless, the desert wide and silent, and the air so cold it felt like it was freezing inside my lungs. I was hauling auto parts from Sacramento to Salt Lake City, running overnight because I preferred empty roads and quiet hours. I had been driving for hours without seeing a single vehicle in either direction. My name is Caleb. I've been trucking for more than a decade. I never pick up hitchhikers. Not once. Not ever. But that night, something made me brake. Something made me stop. And I've spent every night since wondering what would have happened if I had kept driving. I first saw him as a small shape on the shoulder ahead, hunched, unmoving, almost blending into the desert shadows. As I got closer, the beam of my headlights revealed a man in his mid-30s, wearing torn jeans and a gray hoodie smeared with dust. His left arm hung at an odd angle, bent sharply inward at the wrist in a way that made my stomach twist. He held his arm against his body like he was trying to protect it from the cold or the pain. He didn't wave. Didn't shout. He simply stood there beside the road, staring at the pavement with his shoulders trembling. Something in me, maybe pity, maybe instinct, forced my hand to the wheel. Before I could talk myself out of it, I slowed down, pulled over, and rolled the window halfway down. "You all right, man?" I called out. He nodded slowly but didn't speak. His eyes were glassy, reflecting the headlights in a strange, unfocused way. When he got close enough to the cab, the interior light showed the full state of his wrist, swollen, discolored, twisted at an angle that looked like it could never heal properly. "You need a hospital," I said. "Closest one is in Ely. I can take you there." He nodded again. Still silent. I unlocked the passenger door. He climbed in slowly, careful with his injured arm, and settled into the seat without a word. As I pulled back onto the highway, he pointed straight ahead. Just a single gesture, nothing more, but clear enough. "Ely?" I asked. He didn't respond. Just stared forward, breathing in quiet, shallow bursts. The silence felt too heavy. Suffocating. I tried again. "What happened to your wrist?" "Nothing. Not even a blink." Only after a full minute did he speak, and when he did, his voice sounded cracked and distant, like someone who hadn't used it in days. "Accident." The single word echoed through the cab. "What kind of accident?" I asked. His head tilted slightly, but he didn't look at me. "Car." I didn't press further. The road was empty, the desert pitch black on both sides, and something about the man felt brittle, like pushing him for answers might cause him to break apart completely. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The silence grew heavier with each mile. Finally, I heard him whisper something. It was soft, almost a mumble. I turned down the heater fan. "What did you say?" He swallowed, eyes fixed on the darkness ahead. "Don't stop," he murmured. "Please." His tone wasn't frightened, just urgently tired, as if he'd said those two words many times before and no one listened. His breathing grew uneven. His good hand tightened around his thigh. He stared out the windshield like he was expecting something to appear in front of us. And then he said something that sent the first real shiver down my spine. "He follows cars." I tightened my grip on the wheel. "Who?" The man didn't answer. For the next mile, he trembled uncontrollably. Not from cold. From something else, fear, or shock, or something deeper. He kept glancing at the side mirror, as if he expected someone to be running alongside the truck. Then he inhaled sharply. "He's here." I snapped my attention to the mirrors. Nothing but black desert. No headlights. No movement. No shadows cutting across the moonless horizon. "You're seeing things," I said, more to myself than to him. But the man shook his head slowly. "He walks fast," he whispered. "He doesn't stop. He doesn't get tired." My skin crawled. "Who doesn't?" I pressed. The man didn't take his eyes off the mirror. His voice dropped to a broken rasp. "He was in the car with me. After the crash." I crawled out. "He didn't. But he still gets out. At night. When I try to leave, he follows." A cold wave spread through my chest. "Where did this happen?" I asked. He shakily lifted his injured arm and pointed out the passenger window. "Back there." "How far?" He hesitated. "Long time. Hours." I realized something then, something that made my stomach drop. His hoodie wasn't just dirty. It was stiff, stained with something dried into the fabric long ago. Not mud. Not dust. Something darker. Something that had dried for days, not hours. I switched the cab lights on slightly and glanced at him again. That's when I noticed the dried blood beneath his fingernails. The cuts on his face. The way his hoodie was torn at the shoulder. This man wasn't recently injured. This man looked like he'd been hurt for days. But his wrist, that wrist, still hung twisted and swollen, like the injury was fresh. "How long ago was your car accident?" I asked cautiously. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Then, in a quiet voice that made my insides knot, he whispered, "I don't know anymore." My heart thumped hard. The desert outside looked endless. The headlights illuminated nothing but the narrow strip of asphalt ahead. I checked the side mirror again. And froze. Something was moving in the darkness. Far back. Hard to see. But there. A shadow. Tall. Thin. Keeping pace with the truck. I blinked hard. Looked again. It was gone. My breath quickened. "Did you see that?" The man nodded without looking away from the mirror. "He's close." I pressed harder on the accelerator. The engine growled. The trailer rattled. But the fear inside the cab grew heavier with every passing second. A few minutes later, the man spoke again, louder this time, panic cracking his voice. "Don't stop. No matter what." The fear in his tone was enough to send a chill through me. Suddenly, the truck jerked violently, as if something heavy had slammed against the passenger side. The man gasped and clutched his broken wrist. I swerved slightly, fighting for control. "What was that?" I yelled. He didn't answer. But I could feel it, something was outside. Running. Keeping pace. I glanced in the mirror again. A figure. Tall. Dark. No face visible. Just a silhouette moving unnaturally fast alongside the trailer. I nearly lost control of the wheel. The man covered his head with his good hand and screamed, "Don't let him in." I floored the pedal. The truck roared, surging forward. The figure in the mirror blurred and then vanished into the dark. For a long stretch, neither of us spoke. The man trembled violently, whispering incoherent words under his breath. My hands were numb from gripping the wheel. A distant glow finally appeared ahead, the lights of Ely. "We're almost there," I said. My voice cracked. The man didn't react. When we reached the first intersection, I pulled into the emergency lane near the small hospital. I turned to him. "You're safe now. Let's get you inside." But he didn't move. He sat motionless, staring ahead, his chest barely rising. "Hey," I said, touching his shoulder. His head slumped to the side. His eyes stared past me. Empty. Lifeless. I jumped out of the truck and ran around to the passenger door. I opened it and grabbed his wrist to check for a pulse. His skin was ice cold. His twisted wrist, the injury that had looked fresh, was dried, shriveled, the skin gray around the bruising. I called for help, shouting toward the hospital entrance. 2 nurses rushed out with a gurney. They checked him and exchanged a look that froze my blood. "He's been dead a long time," one whispered. "At least 3 days." My body went numb. "That's impossible," I said. He talked. He was terrified. The nurse placed a hand on my arm. "I'm sorry." They covered him with a sheet and wheeled him inside. Shaking violently, I returned to my cab. On the passenger seat lay a hospital wristband half torn off. On it was printed his name. And the date of admittance. 3 days earlier. The date of his car accident. The date he was declared deceased. I stared at the band for a long time, unable to breathe. Outside my windshield, the desert wind howled. Then, faintly, my passenger side mirror shifted, as if something had brushed against it. And from the dark road behind me, barely audible through the noise of the engine, came a sound I will never forget. Footsteps. Running. Fast. The end. The abandoned semi on Route 93. It happened on U.S. Route 93 in Nevada, in the most isolated stretch between Ely and Pioche, where the desert rolls endlessly in every direction and the night feels heavier than the sky itself. It was early August 2022, around 2:10 in the morning, a humid, windless night when the air sat unmoving over the asphalt. I was hauling building supplies to Las Vegas after a late pickup in Twin Falls. The road was so empty that for nearly an hour I didn't see a single vehicle or light, just the narrow white lines racing under my headlights and the distant silhouettes of mountains dissolving into darkness. My name is Dylan. I've been a truck driver long enough to know that the desert has a way of playing tricks on you, illusions caused by heat, fatigue, or distance. But what I saw that night wasn't an illusion. What happened after wasn't a hallucination. And the way that abandoned semi acted defied every rule of reality I've known. I first spotted it far ahead as a vague shape, a dark outline blocking the right lane. At first I thought it was a broken-down truck or a trailer jackknifed awkwardly across the road. As I approached, my headlights cut deeper into the dark and confirmed it, a semi, parked dead still in the middle of Route 93 with no hazards, no flashers, and no sign of a driver. Its cab was white once, now coated in dust. The trailer was plain, no company markings. One of its rear doors hung slightly ajar like it hadn't been properly latched. But what struck me was that the headlights were still faintly warm, glowing with the low, fading heat you see right after a vehicle shuts off. The chrome of the grille shimmered slightly, as if it had just cooled from a long drive. Someone had stopped it moments ago. I slowed down and pulled onto the shoulder. You never leave a fellow trucker stranded if he needs help. I set my hazards, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped into the heavy desert heat. No wind. No insects. No movement. Just an eerie, absolute stillness. I approached the semi cautiously, flashlight beam cutting across the gravel. The dirt around the wheels was untouched. No footprints. No drag marks. No sign anyone had gotten out. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing faintly into the quiet. "Anyone there?" No answer. I climbed up the side steps and looked through the cab window. The keys were still in the ignition. The dash lights were dim but alive, showing the battery hadn't died. A half-finished bottle of water sat in the cup holder. The driver's seatbelt hung twisted, as if the driver had left in a hurry. The logbook sat open on the passenger seat, flipped to a page where the last line read, "Break at 1:36 a.m. Something on road? Checking." Then the writing abruptly ended. A chill slid through me, despite the heat. I opened the cab door. The smell hit me first, not rot, not blood, but stale air, like the inside of a room shut for months. I leaned in and tapped the dash. The plastic was still warm. The engine block still radiated heat. The truck had stopped minutes ago. The driver couldn't have gone far. I climbed back out and circled toward the rear. The desert stretched out silently around me, open and empty under a sky without stars. My flashlight landed on the half-open trailer door. I called out again, "You in there? Need help?" Nothing. Against my better judgment, I gripped the metal handle and pulled the door wider. The smell of old dust and cardboard drifted out. The trailer was almost empty, except for a few wooden pallets stacked near the front. Nothing else. No cargo. No tools. No driver. But the dust near the pallets looked disturbed. Not like footprints, more like something heavy had been dragged inside and then abruptly lifted. I backed away, unease prickling at my skin. That's when I heard it. A single, sharp bang from the far side of my own trailer. I spun around, heart lurching, flashlight scanning the desert. Nothing there. No movement. No wind. Yet the sound had been unmistakable, a fist or something solid hitting metal hard enough to echo. I swallowed, breathing shallow. Then another bang. This time from the front of my trailer. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to steady my voice. Silence again. But I could feel something, a pressure in the air, like the desert was holding its breath. I took a step toward my truck, keeping the abandoned semi in view. My boots scraped against the gravel. The sound seemed unnaturally loud. Then, from behind me, the abandoned semi creaked. The kind of creak metal makes when weight shifts inside a trailer. But the trailer was empty. I froze. Turned slowly. The semi remained still. No movement. No wind to push it. Then the rear door, the one I had opened, began sliding shut on its own, slow at first, then faster until it slammed closed with a hollow metallic boom that shook the desert. I stumbled back, my pulse racing. The door had been heavy, too heavy to move without a strong push or a sudden gust, and the air was dead still. I kept backing toward my truck. Then I saw something that made my blood turn cold. The abandoned semi's brake lights blinked. Once. Then off. Not a glitch. Not a reflection. A deliberate blink. I scrambled the last few feet to my cab, climbed in, and slammed the door shut. I locked it and sat breathless, staring at the semi through the windshield. The desert was still silent. I reached for my phone to call the highway patrol, but before I could dial, my truck shuddered violently, as if something heavy had slammed into the rear trailer door. The whole rig rocked forward, metal rattling. "No," I muttered, gripping the wheel. "No, no, no." Another slam. Harder this time. The trailer shook so much my side mirrors vibrated. Lights on my dash flickered. I twisted in my seat and looked out the side mirror. Something was moving behind my trailer. Not clearly, just a shadow, tall and thin, shifting along the desert floor. It moved with a strange rhythm, not walking, not running, more like gliding or dragging itself while keeping pace. I slammed the truck into drive and floored the accelerator. The engine roared. Gravel spat out behind me. The shadow vanished in the mirror as the trailer swayed and straightened on the road. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. In the mirror, the abandoned semi grew smaller, until something impossible happened. Its headlights turned on. I nearly swerved off the road. The truck, the one sitting dead in the middle of the desert, now stared at me with blazing white beams. Then the engine revved. Loud. Deep. Alive. "No way," I whispered. But the sound grew louder with every second. I floored the pedal harder. My truck surged forward, the speedometer climbing past 70, then 80. The trailer rattled. The desert blurred. But behind me, the abandoned semi's headlights grew brighter. Closer. And closer. It was moving. My breath caught as sweat prickled down my neck. I stared in the mirror, terrified of losing control. Then, just as I reached the next bend in the highway, the headlights behind me flickered, once, twice, and went out completely. The road behind me fell into total darkness. I didn't slow down for another 30 miles. When I reached Pioche just after dawn, I pulled into the sheriff's office and reported the abandoned truck. 2 deputies went out to investigate. 3 hours later, they called me. "There's nothing there," one of them said. "No truck. No tire marks. No sign anything was parked on the road." I insisted. "Explain everything." But the deputy repeated it. "Road's clear. Has been all night." For days after, I barely slept. A week later, a highway patrol officer called me privately and said something that still chills my blood. A truck matching my description, same color, same trailer type, same missing markings, had been reported abandoned on Route 93 6 times in the last 5 years. Each time it vanished before help arrived. Each time someone heard something slamming their trailer. Each time someone saw something moving behind them. No driver was ever found. No records of the truck existed. And each time it appeared, the last entry in its open logbook was the same. Break at 1:36 a.m. Something on road? Checking. Every letter the same. Every time. I haven't driven Route 93 at night since. Sometimes, on long desert stretches, I check my mirrors and swear I see a faint pair of headlights behind me, too dim to be real, too steady to be imagined. And when the desert is silent enough, I swear I hear a distant engine idling, waiting. The end. The man who asked for a tow. It happened on Highway 212 in South Dakota, on the long, empty stretch between Belle Fourche and Mud Butte. It was late April 2022, around 12:40 a.m., a cold night after an unexpected spring storm. The air smelled of wet soil and frozen grass, and the wind pushed low clouds across the moon like drifting smoke. I was hauling a load of agricultural parts to Rapid City and planned to reach a truck stop by 2 a.m. The road was damp, shining under my headlights, and completely deserted. My name is Aaron. I've been driving for 14 years, and I've helped stranded motorists more times than I can count, jump starts, flat tires, even driving someone 20 miles to the nearest town. But the man I met that night wasn't stranded. He wasn't hurt. And what he asked from me, he couldn't have asked anything at all. I first saw him near a sharp curve, standing beside a patch of tall grass that swayed as if something moved through it moments earlier. He wore a yellow reflective vest, the kind highway workers use, and held a small flashlight pointed downward. Beside him, parked at a strange angle near the ditch, was an old blue Ford sedan, its front bumper crushed inward, one of the headlights shattered into glittering pieces on the asphalt. He didn't wave. He didn't shout. He simply lifted his head as I approached, raising the flashlight slightly to show he needed help. I slowed down and pulled onto the shoulder about 10 yards ahead. My hazards blinked across the dark field. The wind was soft but sharp, pushing cold air through the open window. "You all right?" I called out as he approached the cab. He nodded, though the motion was stiff, almost mechanical. "Accident," he said. His voice was low, hoarse, like he'd been shouting earlier or breathing dust. "Car slid on the curve." "You injured?" Another slow shake of the head, but he kept his eyes fixed on mine in a way that made something inside me tighten. "Need help?" I asked. "Tow truck," he answered quietly. "Can you call one?" "Yeah, of course." I reached for my phone but hesitated. "You sure you're okay?" You're shaking. He wasn't shivering the way people do from cold. His movements were jerky, uneven, like his body was struggling to follow commands from a mind that wasn't fully there. He looked toward the crushed Ford. He's still in there, he whispered. Who? Myself. The breath froze in my chest. What do you mean? I forced out. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked toward the car, motioning for me to follow. Something about his motion, slow, heavy, unsteady, made the hairs on my arms lift. But I followed anyway, flashlight in hand. The Ford sat half in the ditch, its front wheels deep in mud. The windshield was spiderwebbed from a severe impact. The driver's side door was bent, as if something had forced it open after the crash. The grass around the car was flattened in a wide arc. The man stopped near the driver's door and pointed inside. I leaned closer. My legs almost buckled. There, slumped against the driver's seat, was a body. His body. Same vest. Same jeans. Same flashlight lying near his broken hand. The wrist was twisted unnaturally, jutting out at an angle that looked agonizing. His forehead was smeared with dried blood, and his eyes were half open but lifeless, staring through the shattered windshield. I staggered back. What? I stuttered. What is happening? The man standing beside me said nothing. He turned his face slightly, as if listening to something in the wind. My phone died, he said softly. I needed someone to call for help. Someone had to stop. I stepped away slowly, my breath shaking. But I pointed at the crushed body. You're dead. He didn't react. He only kept staring at the wrecked car. I needed you to see it, he murmured. For what? To understand I didn't make it. I swallowed hard. Cold sweat rolled down my neck. The wind intensified, swirling dust around my boots. You need a tow truck? I asked, almost whispering. He looked at me with empty, tired eyes. No, he said. I needed someone to find me. My heart pounded painfully. They haven't found the car yet, he continued quietly, voice trembling. They won't. It slid off the road. Rolled. Landed here. Nobody saw. Nobody knew. He looked toward the endless darkness of the prairie. I waited, he whispered. I walked the road every night. Hoping someone would stop. I backed away slowly toward my truck. How long? I asked. He turned his head slightly, the reflective vest shimmering in the windless night. 11 years. A wave of cold washed over me, a cold deeper than any winter wind. Please, he said as he stepped back toward the car. Tell them where to find me. The air around him trembled slightly, like heat rising off asphalt, even though it was freezing outside. Then the wind suddenly gusted, a sharp burst that bent the grass like a bough. I blinked. And he was gone. Just gone. Only the wrecked Ford remained. My flashlight beam jittered in my shaking hand. I scrambled back into my cab, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My breathing was loud in the silence. I dialed 911 immediately. There's a car, I said, voice cracking. A wreck. Old Ford. I think the driver someone's there. You need to send help. The dispatcher kept asking for details, location, what I saw. I gave everything I could, avoiding the truth because I didn't have the words to explain any of it. A patrol car arrived 20 minutes later. The officer searched the vehicle with his flashlight, radioed something, and walked back to me. This car crashed in 2011, he said slowly. We never found it. He swallowed, squinting at the Ford. And the body inside, he's been dead a long time. I nodded, unable to speak. Who called this in? The officer asked. I opened my mouth. But before I could answer, the patrol radio crackled faintly. A voice whispered through the static. Not the officer. Not the dispatcher. A tired, broken voice I recognized instantly. Thank you. The officer froze. What was that? I didn't answer. The radio stayed silent. The next day, when the sun rose over the prairie, they pulled the car out of the ditch. The remains were taken away. Highway workers cleared the scene. I left South Dakota by noon, but something stayed with me. Sometimes, on empty stretches of road, I swear I see a faint reflective vest ahead in the dark. A man standing on the shoulder. Not waving. Just waiting. And when I pass him, the wind carries a whisper that chills me to the core. I needed someone to find me. The end. Don't park here after dark. Real American trucker incidents. It happened on a remote stretch of Highway 281 in northern Texas, between Windhorst and Jacksboro, where the land is nothing but rolling hills, dead grass, and abandoned ranch fences slowly eaten away by rust. It was late October 2021, close to 11:50 p.m. The moon was a thin slice behind drifting clouds, and the humid heat of the day had dropped into a heavy, suffocating stillness. I was hauling a load of machine parts down to Fort Worth, running late after a delay in Wichita Falls. The highway was empty except for me, the rhythmic hum of the engine, and the chirping of crickets outside my window. My name is Samuel. I've been trucking since 2009 and learned long ago that Texas highways can be unforgiving at night. But nothing I'd ever experienced prepared me for the place locals only speak of in warnings, the old rest pull-off at mile marker 114, the one people say you should never park at after dark. I didn't know the stories then. Now I'll never forget them. My fuel gauge dipped lower than expected, and fatigue settled into my bones. When I saw a small pull-off area with a single broken light post and a faded picnic table, I decided to stop for 10 minutes, just to stretch and splash water on my face before pushing through the last hour of the drive. The sign at the entrance was so weathered I could barely read it, but one line stood out in peeling red letters. Do not park after sunset. I thought it was a vandalized joke or an old maintenance warning. I ignored it. I eased the truck onto the gravel. The engine ticked as it cooled, and the darkness around me felt thicker than it should have. No wind. No birds. No passing cars. Just an oppressive quiet pressing against the windows. I climbed out, and the moment my boots touched the gravel, something felt wrong. The silence wasn't natural. It felt like the entire area was listening. I walked toward the picnic table, flashlight in hand. The wood was splintered, half-rotted, and carved with dozens of initials, dates, and strange scratch marks that didn't look like anything made by a knife. More like someone had clawed at the wood in desperation. I felt a tightness in my chest. Then I heard it. A faint tapping behind my trailer. Slow. Deliberate. Tap. 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 At first I thought it was the wind knocking a loose chain or a branch hitting metal. But there was no wind. No trees. Just open grassland and darkness. Anyone there? I called out. No answer. I took a step toward the rear of the trailer, but the tapping stopped abruptly, as if whoever was making the noise knew I was coming. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I swung my flashlight beam around the area. Nothing. Only the black outline of my trailer against the sky. I walked back to the front, telling myself I was overtired and imagining things. I reached for the cab door when I heard another sound, this time from the field to my right. A whisper. Dragging. Low. Like someone inhaling sharply through clenched teeth. It came again, faint but unmistakable, the sound of breath. Hello? I called out, my voice catching. Still no answer. I turned my flashlight toward the field. The beam caught the grass shifting slightly, not from wind, but from something moving slowly through it. A figure. Very low to the ground. Crawling. My stomach twisted. It moved unnaturally, limbs jerking in strange angles, as if bones weren't aligned correctly. I stepped backward toward my cab, my pulse rising. The figure crawled into the open, illuminated fully by my flashlight. A man. Or what used to be one. His clothes were torn, dirty, soaked with mud. His arms dragged unevenly, like his elbows bent in the wrong direction. His head jerked upward, revealing a twisted neck and sunken cheeks illuminated by the faint flashlight beam. His eyes, they were wide, unfocused, milky white. He exhaled sharply, a desperate rasp that sent a jolt of terror through me. "Help!" he croaked. I froze. His voice was a broken whisper, strained through pain. "Help, me!" I stepped back again, hands shaking. "Hold on, I'll call someone." He suddenly twisted onto his side, moving faster, his limbs snapping into positions no human joints could allow. He crawled toward me, jerking forward with terrifying speed. I sprinted the last few feet to my cab, yanked open the door, and scrambled inside. I slammed the lock, breathing so hard it felt like my chest was tearing open. Then he hit the door. A thud that shook the entire cab. I screamed and jumped back. The man's face was pressed against the window, smeared with dirt and something darker. His mouth hung open, drops of blood sliding down his chin. His breath fogged the glass. His fingers scraped the window with a high-pitched squeal. "Don't leave me," he rasped. His eyes were empty, lifeless, yet somehow still seeing me. I fumbled for the ignition, hands trembling violently. The engine roared to life, headlights flooding the gravel with harsh white light. The moment the lights hit him, he recoiled violently, scrambling backward on all fours like an animal, body twisting in impossible angles. Then he lurched upright and bolted into the field, vanishing into the tall grass as quickly as he had appeared. I floored the pedal and pulled out of the rest area so fast my trailer skidded. My palms were slick with sweat. My breath came in broken gasps as the road straightened before me. A few miles later, once I calmed enough to think straight, I grabbed the CB radio. "Anybody near 281? I asked. "There's a guy hurt out here, looks bad. Someone needs to check the old rest pull-off after mile 114. A moment of static passed before a voice answered. "Don't stop there," the driver said. "Not at night." I swallowed. "Why?" "There was a man." "No, there wasn't." My skin prickled. "What do you mean?" The radio crackled again. "That rest area's been abandoned since 2007, the man said. Worker got hit by a passing car. Dragged off the road. Body was found days later. People say he still crawls around the pull-off at night. Asking for help." My hands froze on the wheel. "No one's supposed to stop there," the driver said, voice low. "Locals put that sign up themselves. Don't park after dark. Ever." I drove the rest of the night with every mirror pointed behind me. When I reached Fort Worth in the morning, my legs were so weak I stumbled getting out of the cab. 2 days later, I checked the exterior camera system on my truck. The timestamp aligned perfectly with the moment he hit my door. And there he was. A man with twisted limbs. A broken jaw. Empty eyes. Crawling toward the cab. Then lunging at the door with violent desperation. But in the reflection of the window, not his reflection, but mine, I saw something that still haunts me. His hand was on my shoulder. Yet I hadn't felt a thing. I deleted the footage the same day. But every time I drive down an empty Texas highway at night, especially near old rest pull-offs, my lights flicker slightly. And sometimes, in the corner of the mirror, I swear I see a shape crawling through the grass, following the truck. Waiting for someone else to stop. The end. The truck following with no driver. It happened on Interstate 70 in western Kansas, the long, flat section between Oakley and Hayes where the land is nothing but wheat fields, wind, and sky. It was mid-August 2022, around 1:25 in the morning. The heat of the day had broken, leaving a thick, warm stillness over the highway. Not a breeze. Not a cloud. No cars. The air felt heavy, like the world had paused. My name is Mark. I've been driving trucks for nearly 20 years, and I've run I-70 more times than I can count. It's a quiet road at night. Predictable. Safe. But that night shattered everything I thought I knew about lonely highways. I was hauling refrigerated goods eastbound. My trailer was heavy, the drive steady. I kept the speed at 65, letting the hum of the engine settle me. The night seemed normal at first. Crickets outside. Empty fields. Mile markers passing like clockwork. Then I saw headlights far behind me. Two bright white beams cresting a distant rise. It was the first vehicle I'd seen in nearly an hour. Nothing unusual about that, truckers often travel at night. I checked my mirror again after several seconds. But something was off. The truck behind me was moving fast. Too fast for a heavy rig. The headlights grew larger in my mirror at an unnatural rate, closing the gap far quicker than physics made sense for. I shifted slightly in my seat. "Easy, buddy," I muttered. Plenty of highway. But the truck didn't pass. It pulled right up behind me and matched my speed perfectly. I gripped the wheel tighter. Tailgaters annoy everyone, but another semi riding inches from my trailer? That's suicide. I flicked my hazards. A signal for them to back off. They didn't. They stayed so close I couldn't see the truck's grille, only the glare of its headlights flooding my mirrors. "What the hell?" I whispered. I tapped my brakes lightly. Just enough to flash the brake lights, not enough to slow me. Still no reaction. The truck behind me stayed glued to my bumper, matching my every move. I picked up my CB mic. "Eastbound on 70, about 10 miles west of Hayes," I called. "Who's tailgating me? Back it off before you kill us both." Only static answered me. No voice. No background noise. Just a low, crackling static like the signal was dying. I tried again. "Come on. This isn't funny." Silence. I checked the mirror again. The headlights stayed relentlessly close, unwavering, perfectly centered. Too precise. No sway. No drift. It was like the truck was attached to my bumper by an invisible chain. That's when the first shiver crawled up my back. Something wasn't right. I pushed the accelerator. The engine growled, speed climbing to 70. The trailer rumbled slightly under the strain. The truck behind me accelerated too. Perfectly. Instantly. Matching me inch for inch. My breath tightened. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, but all I could see was that blinding pair of headlights following too closely, too smoothly, too silently. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The headlights didn't bounce. Every vehicle, especially a semi, vibrates on the highway. The suspension dips. The lights sway. But this pair stayed perfectly level, perfectly steady, like they were drawn on the darkness itself. "This isn't right," I whispered. I tried pressing the CB again. "You behind me. Say something." Static. Then, faintly through the static, I heard, breathing. Slow. Deep. Cold. I felt sweat gather at the base of my neck. I checked my mirrors again, and that's when my blood ran cold. There was no one in the driver's seat. The truck following me, a black Kenworth with a long nose cab, had no driver. No outline. No silhouette. No movement. Just an empty cab and two blinding headlights locked onto the back of my trailer. I almost screamed. I stomped the accelerator. The RPM surged. My trailer shook violently. The speedometer crept toward 80, then 85. The black truck followed effortlessly. Still inches behind me. Still perfectly centered. Still driverless. My hands shook so badly I nearly lost control. I spotted an exit sign up ahead, a small county road that curved sharply off the interstate. Without thinking, I yanked the wheel and took the exit at dangerous speed. My trailer bounced, tires screeching, the whole rig swerving wildly as gravel spat from beneath the wheels. I fought the wheel until the truck stabilized. Heart racing, I glanced up at my mirrors. There was nothing behind me. Just darkness. No headlights. No truck. No sound. I slowed to a stop on the shoulder, chest heaving, sweat dripping down my back. The silence pressed in around me. I waited. 1 minute passed. 2. Then, faintly in the distance, far down the interstate, I saw something. Headlights. Pair of them. Perfectly steady. Climbing the rise onto the county road. No, I whispered. No, no, no. The truck crested the hill and turned onto the exit. Smoothly. Silently. Still driverless. It was coming for me. I threw my rig into gear and floored it, gravel exploding under my tires. The black truck followed, headlights brightening with unnatural precision. My pulse hammered in my skull as I barreled down the narrow county road. A fork appeared ahead, 2 unlit roads cutting in opposite directions. I took the left as sharply as I could. The trailer fishtailed. I corrected. The road straightened. My mirror showed nothing. No headlights. I held my breath. 30 seconds passed. 40. Then the CB crackled sharply, loud enough to make me jump. A whisper seeped through the static, icy, broken, not belonging to any living person. I found you. I nearly lost control of the wheel. The headlights reappeared behind me, impossibly close, flooding my cab with blinding white light. I screamed and floored the gas pedal. My engine roared like it was tearing itself apart. My eyes burned with sweat. The road churned beneath me. Suddenly the black truck's headlights flickered, once, twice, and then vanished completely. Darkness swallowed the road. I didn't slow down. Not until the first glow of early dawn lit the eastern horizon. Not until I reached Hayes and pulled into the first truck stop I saw. I stumbled out of the cab, legs trembling, lungs burning. 2 other truckers stared at me like I'd seen a ghost. Maybe I had. Later that morning, after I calmed down, I asked a local mechanic about strange trucks on the highway. He looked at me for a long moment before answering. Black Kenworth? Long nose? No driver? He asked quietly. I nodded, barely breathing. He sighed. That truck went off the interstate 20 years ago. Driver fell asleep at the wheel. They found the rig idling against a ravine with no one inside. Folks say it still runs that stretch on bad nights. Gets right up behind you. Follows you. Matches your speed. Doesn't stop. Why? I whispered. He shook his head. Maybe looking for the driver who left it. I never took I-70 at night again. And sometimes, even in daylight, my mirrors catch a pair of steady headlights behind me. Too steady. Too close. And when they blink twice, the way they did that night, I press the pedal harder without thinking. Because I know that if I slow down long enough, I'll see the empty cab again. Watching. Following. Waiting for me to stop. The end.